When you hear the words self-care, what comes to mind? Maybe you're thinking of a hot bubble bath or a great massage, maybe a relaxing pedicure or a girls' weekend. Those things can be wonderful, but I think we've unintentionally turned self care into something that we would earn after we have taken care of everyone around us. So, what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if self care isn't a reward? What if it's actually one of the healthiest boundaries that we can build? If you're tired of people pleasing, caring too much, and wondering why peace still feels so hard to hold on to, you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Lori, mom, former people pleaser, and your boundaries coach. Here we talk about how to protect your peace, set healthier boundaries, and get clear on what actually matters so that you can build a life that feels lighter, calmer, and more satisfying. So let's stop the chaos for a minute, moms, catch our breath, and get into this next episode. Welcome back to Healthy Boundaries for Moms. I am your host, Lori Grimes, and today I want to talk about something that I think many of us are struggling with. So as moms, we're often the first ones to sacrifice ourselves. We've talked about that several times here on the podcast. We're the first ones to skip sleep. We are the first ones to not get our steps in. We're going to rush through dinner, rush through lunch. We will put off our quiet time with God that we promised ourselves we were going to do. And we keep just saying yes to everyone else while continuing to say no to ourselves. And then one day we wonder why we're tired or exhausted. We're feeling overwhelmed, impatient. We're snapping at the kids and the husband. And we're just emotionally checked out. Does this sound familiar at all? So I don't think that's because we're weak, guys. I think it's because we've crossed one of the most important boundaries we can have, which is an internal boundary. And an internal boundary is taking responsibility for stewarding the body, mind, emotions, and spirit God has entrusted to us. So no one else can consistently do that for us, right? Your spouse can't get the sleep for you, right? And your children are not going to go in and get that exercise knocked out for you. Your friends can't do that alone time with God for you, right? So no one else can continually replenish what you're unwilling to replenish yourself. So while God often uses other people to encourage us and care for us, it isn't someone else's responsibility to manage our well-being. That is a part of our stewardship. So have you ever heard of the financial advice to pay yourself first? So in finance, you're supposed to be making this intentional deposit before you go and spend on everything else. Okay, you're supposed to pay yourself first. So that might be like putting money in investment account and a Roth IRA and your 401. But I think it's the same principle that applies to our lives around self-care. Healthy boundaries means making regular deposits before expecting yourself to be making withdrawals. So that might look like time with God as a deposit, or getting enough sleep as a deposit. Maybe you're going to move and get your certain steps in a day, and that's a deposit. Or taking care of yourself by eating the foods that are nourishing to you, or on a food plan of some sort. That is making a deposit. Or how about just being quiet, just getting some time to be quiet and restore yourself. So healthy relationships are even deposits. So times we spend with our girlfriends are very important to our boundaries. And rest is a deposit. We really do need to get the proper sleep. And laughter, guys, is a deposit. That's one of my favorite parts, is laughter. So when life asks something of us, we're constantly making these withdrawals. And the problem is that many of us are making withdrawals all day long without intentionally making those deposits. So the account runs dry, right? If you keep pulling out money and you don't ever make a deposit, your bank's going to run dry. So sometimes I think we're just doing fine because we're functioning, right? We're staying above water, we're treading the water, but we're still helping, we're still volunteering, we're still working, we're still taking care of our kids and everyone around us. But eventually our body starts talking back, right? We start to feel that impatience bubble up, or we're going to snap here at our kids because we're at our limit. We're feeling that resentment. We're losing patience with our spouse. Our anxiety starts to skyrocket. Our exhaustion is just a normal way of life. And those reactions aren't always signs that we're failing. Sometimes they're just signals. We've talked about, the warning signals that come on an instrument board on your car. Like that's the warning telling us, hey, something is about to go really wrong with your car. So our bodies often are keeping score, and they recognize that depletion before our minds even do. So the other night I went out with my friends and we had a wonderful night celebrating one of my best friend's husband's birthday. And we had such a great night. We laughed, we talked, we stayed out later than we normally would. And I didn't get a whole lot of sleep. And now spending time with my friends, it is a good thing. It is a definite positive thing. And community is definitely a gift from God. But the next morning, like I had a choice. I could pretend that nothing had changed and just push through my weekend. I could fill up my schedule. I could run these errands. I could work harder and squeeze everything in on my to-do list and ignore the fact that I was depleted. I had used a lot of my resources, but I could recognize that I made a withdrawal. It was a good withdrawal, one that was absolutely worth it, but it was still a withdrawal. And that meant I needed to make some deposits. So maybe that looked like just slowing my pace down. Maybe it was just I needed to choose nourishing food instead of whatever would be easiest to get, like fast food. Maybe it meant just getting to bed earlier that night, or going for a walk instead of scrolling on my phone, or doing an intense workout. Maybe it was just creating a little margin instead of filling every single hour. So years ago, I probably would have just pushed harder. I would have ignored the fact that I was depleted. I would have just said, I'll catch up later. And I would have ignored all the signs that my body was trying to yell at me. But what I've learned, that wisdom doesn't simply ask, what am I capable of doing today? Wisdom is asking you, given what we've already spent, what would be the healthiest investment that I can make today? And that, guys, is what an internal boundary looks like. So many of the things we are pushing ourselves to do are great and good things, right? Serving is good. Working is good. Exercise is definitely good. Being productive is good, and helping others is good. And hanging out with friends is obviously good. But even good things become unwise when they're consistently ignoring the limits God has designed for us to have. So we don't want to wait until the engine seizes and the car doesn't work, right, before changing the oil. We don't want to wait until we got a negative balance in our bank account before we think about like putting some money in there, right? And we don't wait until we're severely dehydrated before we drink water. So healthy boundaries are meant to be preventative maintenance. So kind of like a car, right? And the truth is, most of us are already knowing what we should be doing. We just don't always protect it. So research shows that about 3 in 10 adults don't get the recommended 7 or more hours of sleep each night. That's a lot of people not getting sleep. Another study found that 77% of Americans say getting enough sleep is very important, yet only about 1/3 believe they're actually doing it well. And the same study found that 57% say regular exercise is very important, but fewer than 1 in 3 feel like they're doing well at maintaining it. So the problem isn't that we don't value these things. We acknowledge them. The problem is that we're not protecting them. We're not protecting appointments or deadlines. We're just protecting everybody else's needs, if we're being honest. But we don't always protect the very habits that allow us to show up as our healthiest selves. And that's why I believe self-care isn't a luxury. It's not being selfish, and it isn't something that you earn after everyone else's needs have been met. It's an internal boundary. It's stewardship. Preventative boundaries are simply just making regular deposits before your account is empty. When we protect those deposits, like our sleep and our time with God, eating the right food, movement, rest, and our healthy relationships, we're able to give from an abundance and overflowing instead of obligation. So internal boundaries also help us stay in our God-given lane. So what do I mean by that? They remind us what belongs to God and what belongs to other people and what belongs to us. So Romans 12:3 says, "For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you." So God gives us each a measure of faith and grace and strength that we are going to need for what he called us to do. But when we step outside the boundaries, trying to fix everyone and carry everyone's feelings and emotions, or take responsibility for choices that belong to someone else, we begin to rely on our own strength instead of his strength. So sometimes we're depleted or exhausted, not because God's asked too much of us, but because we took on things he never asked us to carry. And one of the healthiest internal boundaries we can have is knowing where our responsibility ends and where God's begins. And sometimes we hear the words self-care and immediately we're like, oh, that's selfish. But scripture is painting a totally different picture. So here in 1 Corinthians 6:19-20, Paul writes this: "Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You are bought with a price. Therefore, honor God with your body." So taking care of yourself isn't putting yourself above everybody else. It's honoring what God has entrusted to you. So when we constantly care for ourselves, we are able to love from abundance instead of this obligatory mess that we get into. So we're less likely to become bitter or resentful. We're not going to burn out so easily. We're less likely to give because we're doing it out of guilt or we think that we have the shoulds. Instead, we're just giving from a place of like health and joy and overflow. Doesn't that sound way better and a lot more peaceful? So this week, I want you to ask yourself one simple question, okay? Where am I making constant withdrawals without making enough deposits? So for you, it may be sleep. It could be time with God. It could be just getting enough movement or exercise in. Maybe it's making a meal plan or prepping your food or just picking out what dinners will be for the week. Maybe it's rest. Just choose one area this week, just one, and protect it like a boundary. Like you've got a line around it. Protect it because there's a boundary that should be around it. And remember, healthy boundaries aren't only about saying no to other people. Sometimes they're about finally saying yes to the stewardship God has called you to practice in your own life. Hey friend, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds and go join our free Facebook page at Healthy Boundaries for Moms? That's where we go deeper, share what's actually working, and support each other in real life. I will also share some great tools and tips to help you along this journey. I have also included a link to sign up for our brand new weekly newsletter in the Facebook group. Don't forget to hit follow and leave a quick review on Apple. It really lets me know that this podcast is helping you. More importantly, it helps more women find this podcast. Now go, say no to something that's stealing your peace and say yes to something you actually need. And I'll meet you back here in the next episode.